epic theatre. Now, epic theatre is a complex theory of the creation of a style of theatre according to Bertolt Brecht. And I'm not going to stand here in the boiling sun in Myanmar explaining that to you in its entirety, because it would take an hour maybe. But what I will do is I will talk you through some of the basic elements of it. Now, Bertolt Brecht rejected what he saw as the old dramatic style theatre. And the old dramatic style theatre is basically the majority of the type of performances that you see in the West End, which is you get some star actors, they stand up there on the stage, they act in a play which has a sort of Stanislavskian realism to them, and they tell their story, and you go away and you don't think very much of it other than how nice the set was, what a nice story it was, or what a sad story it was, and so on and so forth. Now, Bertolt Brecht, he rejected that because he wanted a theatre which made people sit up and think about issues. It was the issues that were the most important thing. Now, the epic theatre is not just one or two things. The epic theatre is created by a whole variety of things. So, for a start, he didn't think that they should be linear necessarily. And linear means in a line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or A, B, C, D, E, you know. So, for example, you can have flashbacks. So they don't have to be linear. Another element of epic theatre was they were episodic, which means that each sort of scene, if you like, was a self-contained episode, and you could understand that episode on its own without reference to any of the other scenes. It should be very clear to understand. He sometimes used placards, and the placards were used to create what he called the Verfremdungseffekt. Now, the Verfremdungseffekt is something that people often explain, but explain very poorly. They use things like, they call it the alienation effect or the distancing effect. They're not very good descriptors, really. Probably the best kind of explanation of what Verfremdungseffekt is, it makes the usual unusual. And so by doing that, it causes the audience to think, it causes them to stop, it causes them to think, well, what's all that about then? So, for example, if you see something that is usual, something that is traditional, you see from behind a beautiful white dress, a woman standing in a beautiful white dress, a man in a suit, looking very handsome. In front of them is a priest with a Bible, or a vicar with a Bible. It's in a church, there's a church congregation on the other side, you have wedding music. Well, that's usual, you understand that. But then, if the bride turns round, and it's a monkey's face, and the groom turns round and it's a man's face, well then, you've made the usual seem unusual. So why? What is the reason for that? And so therefore the audience starts to think about what those reasons might be. Gestus or gestus. This is, it seems like it's a word relating to gesture. Gestus or gestures. And basically what Bertolt Brecht said was, when you watch a piece of theatre, you should be able to tell what is going on, even if you do not understand the language. And the reason being, because the way the actors use their physicality should be something that tells you what is happening there, tells you what is going on. He used speaking in the third person. So, for example, if I stand up here and say, Mr. Whitehead says you must revise, I'm speaking of myself in the third person. It was a device to create this Verfremdungseffekt, to make the usual seem unusual, to make people think, why is he using that? Why is he talking about himself as a separate entity? The epic theatre, it's complex, there are lots of theories, there are lots of elements to the theory. Also things like montage. Now, montage is something that students of media will probably understand, artists will understand, but it is also a theatrical term. And montage means that you get your understanding through a series of images or ideas that are transmitted during a play. So you don't just get straight to the point. So, Fred hates Sheila. That's straight there, isn't it? So what you get is you get a series of images and ideas that eventually help you to understand this is a relationship in crisis. So it's how you put together a series of ideas or images. It's more complicated than you think, epic theatre. Don't just use the term glibly. A-level students in particular, don't just throw it in there without understanding what it means in its totality. Read about it, explore it in depth.